Well, good morning. So before I get too far going, I want to give you all an update. So here's what I want you to do for this update. You remember about a year ago we started the campaign, the Going a Little Farther campaign. If you weren't here, you can ask me about that, and I can give you information later on. And if you've forgotten about it, I can give you information later on as well, whatever else. But about a year ago we started this campaign, or a year ago. It's a 2-year campaign for us, and it's this Going a Little Farther. And there were kind of 4 pillars of this Going a Little Farther campaign. It's not just a financial campaign here for the church. There's another component of it as well I'll get to in just a second. But here's what I want to do. I don't have a slide to give you on this, so I want you to pull out whatever you like to take notes on. Maybe it's a piece of paper. Maybe it's the hymnal in front of you. I don't know. Whatever it is that happens to be. It's probably not a hymnal. It's probably a Bible. If you take notes in the Bible, you have to take it home when you're done. Piece of paper, your phone, kind of whatever that is, because I don't have it here. I want you to write the information down. I wanted to make sure everybody kind of has it to go with them, rather than me just showing it to you and say, here's what it is. And so this campaign really kind of started on, again, 4 different pillars. First idea was, and I'm just going to give you the Cliff Notes version. You can ask details later. I'll give it to you. The first idea was that going a little farther, taken from the idea that Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, when he's with the disciples, and it says going a little farther, and he goes to God and he says, "Hey, not my will, but yours be done." Really, and that's the outlook. That's the approach that we want to have with our lives as followers of Christ. That we go, not my will, but yours be done, and we're always willing to go a little farther, than where we happen to be, further in commitment, and so on and so forth. And so there are 4 aspects of this, and the first one is the idea if you're not a person who is a faithful tither, but is maybe an occasional giver or maybe a faithful giver, whatever that happens to be, what does that look like to go a little farther in that regards? What does it look like to give more consistently, or to give a little more than what you have always done? Maybe getting towards the tithe. Maybe it's 1%. Maybe you're going to get to 2. Maybe it's 5%. You want to get to 5.3. Whatever it happens to be, I don't know. But what does that little farther look like for you? That was one component of it. Second component of it was a little farther of what does it look like for me to serve the church in a way that I don't normally serve. There's a lot of ways that people serve, some in large ways, some in small ways, and the idea is, where am I serving, where am I involved, or where am I not? Where can I use my talents, my abilities, the things that God has blessed me with to further advance the kingdom at large, and also the kingdom right here at BNC, this local kind of kingdom here. And so that was the second one. And the third and fourth one were kind of tied together. And what does it look like to go a little farther with regards to beyond just our budget, just beyond just our building repairs, and then beyond Birdsboro? There are some projects that we're taking on as a church that need to be done around the building, that just as far as, I thought we were going to take offering now. He's coming like, I'll give right now. There's some things that we have to do as far as upkeep for the building. I have been to other churches, and some of them look pretty dilapidated, to be honest with you, right? And that is not where we are. But that's because we pay very close attention to the way things are and just the state of the building and repair and so on and so forth. And so there are things that we would like to do, that we need to do as a church, that are beyond just the basic maintenance. And so we wanted people to kind of look towards that. Where could you give towards the building fund to kind of help do some more of those projects? And we've been able to do a couple of those projects already, and there are still larger ones and other ones that we have to do. And the last thing was just, what does it look like for us as a church to move beyond Birdsboro, to move beyond this building, and how do we make an impact in the larger community, whether that's Berks County or maybe across the line in some other way, some shape or form. But what does it look like for us to kind of go a little farther in space-wise just for that? And so we asked people to kind of give towards a couple of those areas, and so I wanted to give you these numbers. So here was what was pledged to the campaign. And we didn't have a thermometer, right, where you fill up. We didn't have a goal that we were trying to get to, because the goal that we were trying to get to was everybody looks at their life and goes, what does just a little farther look like, right? That was me walking a few steps. I don't know if you caught that or not, right? So what does just a little farther look like? And so here's what was pledged to facilities. 46,592, right? 46592. 46592, that's where you write that number down. At least pretend. Do this for like a second, right? So 46592, thank you. And then here's what was kind of pledged to the beyond was 11,200, 11200. And so here's what's come in for those two numbers, right? For facilities, 16,617. I rounded up, right? 16,617. Thank you, Sydney. I appreciate you writing that out for me. And so if you can do the math very quickly in your head, I cannot. We are 1 week shy of halfway through, and that percentage is 36%. So 1 week shy, you'd hope we were a little closer to 50. We're a little closer to 36, right? And then when it comes to the beyond, 11,200, we have what's come in is 3,552. That one I had to round down. Couldn't round that one up because it wasn't at 50 or above, right? 50 cents, right? And so that one is 32%. So here we are just under 50% through of the campaign. And I don't want to take any more time than this, right? 50% through the campaign. Ask me all the questions you want to ask me later on. We'll tell you where stuff is going, what it's going towards, what it's not going towards, so on and so forth. We're 50% through roughly, and we're at 36 and 32%. And I don't say that to say, hey, let's get on the ball here, right? I don't say that to say that. I say that to say, let's remember the commitment that we've made as followers of Christ to go a little farther. What does that look like? And sometimes things come up where we can't continue. We can't give what we thought we were going to give. Things happen. We understand that, right? From the church that Paul writes to with, what was it, Macedonia a couple of weeks ago. Someone, they gave more than the other ones did. They gave more than they had committed to giving, and it kind of offset what the other ones couldn't give, and that's what's going to happen as well. There are going to be some of you who said, I committed to this, I felt like God was calling me towards this, but things happen, things change, and I can't, and someone else is going to step up and go, hey, I can give a little more than what I said I could give, or I can give a little more and I didn't say I was going to give. So I wanted to give you that kind of brief update. At any time, you are more than welcome to kind of ask me, pull me aside, and I can answer any questions that you have about that campaign. I can give you a much longer version if you'd like, or I can give you a different version that has different details, whatever it happens to be. But this is something we're going to continue for the next year, and at the end of November is when this campaign will be over, and we'll keep updating you guys throughout the time. So that was the little bit that I want to say before I got into that. And I will also say this. My word count today was less because I knew I was doing that first. I actually was able to get my word count down this week. I went through and deleted some stuff. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. Thanks for the clapping over there. I was able to kind of get the word count down because I wanted to fit all of that in. And I did say it quickly, but anyway. So I'm glad you're here. Week 3 of the Sleepless and Birdsboro series, right? If you've been here for the first 2 weeks, or if this is your first week, what we're doing is we're looking at the things that keep us up at night. Not the bump in the night kind of stuff, not like the, hey, I'm afraid of this stuff, not like the, I heard something scratching at the window when I tried to go to sleep, or this real dull, low, guttural sound outside. It's none of those types of things. But like the guilt and the worry and the busyness or the distractions or just the kind of the questions that kind of keep us from the sleep that we need to get day in and day out. You guys look like you're a little not rested today or something. Like I feel like I'm not getting a lot of interaction, but we'll get there, I think. So anyway, so week 1, that's a little better. Thank you. Week 1 we talked about, thank you, much better. Where's Sherry, right? Anyway, so there we go. So week 1 we talked about how we can get so busy. We can get kind of so busy in our lives that we don't sleep, right? That we don't rest the way that God modeled and intended for us. And the answer to that, the answer is kind of we lean into the rhythm that God created, 6 and 1, and we take Jesus up on his invitation where he says, hey, come to me, you who are weary, and I will give you rest, right? So we take Jesus up on his invitation. And then last week we talked about worry, because a lot of us worry about stuff. We stay up every night and we worry about what could happen and what's going on and with the family and friends and whatever else. And so we read through Psalm 121, which is one of the Psalms of Ascent. The pilgrims would sing this as they were approaching the hill of Jerusalem, coming to Jerusalem to worship. And the recurring theme in Psalm 21, the 8 verses of Psalm 121, is a shamar, that God is our shamar, 6 times in 8 verses. And God is our protector. He is our keeper. He is our guardian. One of the verses right in the middle says that he never sleeps. And because he never sleeps, we can. We can kind of rest and say that, God, you've got this. Next week, we're going to celebrate Ruth Schaefer, who many of you who probably know. She was a key part of this church for a long time and getting this church started as well. And we're going to celebrate with the family. They will all be here next week. All of them from all over wherever they are in the United States will be here that week. And not world, but the United States will be here that week. And we're going to celebrate her and her involvement here. But we're also going to kind of talk about how when God calls us to fulfill his mission, we experience not only an eternal rest, but we also experience kind of a fulfilled and restful life now, like here, day in and day out. And so I encourage you to kind of hang around. We'll have a brief little kind of reception afterwards to kind of mingle with the family and celebrate and kind of and talk with them a little bit. So this week, so that's the 3 weeks, kind of 2 weeks we've been, where we're going. But this week we're going to talk about the noise. Kind of all the outside stuff, kind of the clutter, kind of the volume, kind of the constant loudness that's around us. Because I'm sure that you've noticed kind of how loud life can be, right? And I don't mean just in general, like the volume of kids out on a playground, or like traffic, or people honking horns and whatever else, or like construction, you hear all this movement. I mean the kind of noise that kind of seeps into our soul, the kind of noise that kind of gets deep, deep down within us. It's the kind of noise that is the nonstop news cycle that we hear day in and day out. The political shouting, right? Have you ever heard, politicians and the one side or the other kind of shouting about the other one, right? The political shouting, the cultural arguing. It's just kind of this steady drip of constant and breaking updates that we always seem to get day in and day out, and we just never can get away from. The kind of things that pull our attention away from what it is that really matters. And even when you turn off your TV, even when you close your laptop or hit the screen button on your monitor, or when you put your phone down, that noise that you have surrounded yourself, that noise that's been around you all day long, seeps in and becomes the noise that's inside of you. And then it keeps you awake at night. All of that keeps you awake at night. And certainly, absolutely, you're missing out on a good night's sleep. That's the one thing you're missing out on. But more than that, you're putting yourselves in absolute spiritual danger. It's not just that I'm not getting a good night's sleep. It's not just that I'm not at my best when I get up tomorrow morning and I'm going to be exhausted and tired throughout the day. It's that you're putting yourself in this great spiritual danger because prolonged exposure to all of this noise, it doesn't just wear us out, it wears us down. And then it wears us down so much that we can't discern what it is that we're actually hearing. We can't make sense of all the noise that's around us. Over time, we can't tell what's true. We can't tell what's fear. We can't tell what's opinion. We can't tell what's God's voice. And eventually, all we hear at all is the noise that surrounds us. The messiness and the busyness and the upheaval of all the stuff that surrounds us. So if you've ever lied awake at night because the world feels overwhelming, thank you. If you've ever laid awake at night because of the chaos that's out there, what has happened is that has kind of come and then rested itself in here. If that has ever been you, then today is the day for you, because we're going to talk about that noise that steals our rest. And I know it is some of you, because I have had these conversations with some of you. How do I shut this stuff off? This is for you. Today is for you. Pay attention. Whatever you pulled out to take notes on, the Bible, the hymnal, your phone, piece of paper, whatever, take notes today. You don't take notes, watch it later on, call me, and we'll go through it again. But that's the problem. It kind of comes into here. And here's the real problem with all of this noise that's kind of out there. The bigger problem, the deeper problem, the real problem with all this noise is it doesn't just overwhelm us, right? It doesn't just annoy us. It doesn't just kind of get us all riled up, because you do that, right? You listen to the news, you get riled up. Everybody does that on occasion. Sports radio, whatever it is, gets you all riled up. What it's actually doing is it's distracting us. It's calling our attention away. It's causing us to pay attention to something that we weren't already paying attention to. Think about it. Any sudden or unexpected noise kind of causes you to turn your head, doesn't it? You're sitting around the house and you hear on the window and the bird flew into it and you and the cat are looking, or whatever else, right? Or what's the emergency broadcast system when it comes on with those loud, shrill beeps? Like we just had it this past week, and we turn the radio up and they go, this is just a test. It always says it's just a test, but one day it's not going to. But it's something that draws your attention. When we get those loud noises, it draws our attention. And so all of this noise around us steals our attention and causes us to look at whatever's going on. Somewhere we learn to close some of these blinds, and that's pretty good. I'm not as distracted by that. But all of this noise causes us to kind of look left and right and look around. The problem then is with all of this unending noise that's around us, it steals our attention. It gets us looking one way or another. And eventually, what happens every time is whatever gets your attention eventually has your heart. That's where all your energy, that's where all your effort, that's where you're looking, that's where you're focusing on. That's what you're doing. That's what I'm running towards. So all these things that have our attention. And I think that's why Scripture says so often, over and over and over again, talks about being focused. It's warning us about what we hear over and over again. Pay attention to what's coming into you. It says keep your thoughts and your actions on what helps you best serve God, and anything that doesn't lean towards kingdom building, then just toss that away. Anything that pulls you away from Him, get rid of that. Move that to a place of less importance. Because here's the problem. That's the problem, right, with all of the noise that distracts our attention. And then here's what's behind all of that attention. Here's the reality behind all of that. Our enemy knows that he doesn't have to destroy us, or he knows that that's how he can destroy us. It's a lot easier to distract us. if he can just kind of cause us to look in a different direction, if he can just kind of cause us to focus on something that is not really all that important, then he knows that over time it divides our mind. We stop looking at him. We start looking at this. We're divided. We know eventually it discourages us, because when you watch the news, who's encouraged? Nobody. We know that it discourages us, and then we know that what eventually happens is we disengage our faith. We get way worried about what's going on, way overwhelmed with what's happening, than we are faithful in the God who can do something in the midst of all of it. And that's what all of this noise does to us, little by little, without us noticing. Divides us, it discourages us, and then it disengages us. It distracts us. And then when we're distracted, our clarity gets convoluted. We don't know what's important anymore. Our discernment gets distorted. We can't decide what we should and should not be working on. Our message gets muddy. The thing that we talk about day in and day out isn't Jesus and the difference he makes in the world. It's whatever political leaning or whatever popular way is to think. Our purpose, what God has called us to live for, gets polluted. And I worked really hard to make all of those letters line up. But eventually what happens is all of the stuff that kind of happens out there, all the stuff that's around us, eventually bears fruit in here. It's not harmless. It's not just something that we hear and we can move on with it. It's something that we hear that impacts us and that affects us, and that it begins to bear fruit and it begins to grow and bear fruit in our lives more so than what the Word of God does. And this should be a wake-up call for us, because we all live in this world full of noise. And when we aren't careful, what we do all of the time is we acclimate to it. It just becomes normal. Right? It's the idea of if you have to turn on a ceiling fan when you sleep. And then when you go somewhere, you can't sleep because you don't have that constant noise. Like, we get used to it. And then we want it. We're acclimated to it. And then here's what goes on with the noise that's around us. And this is what I've heard from many people. Well, I need to know what's going on. Right? I need to know what's going on. I need to know what's happening in the world. And maybe we do. Maybe you do. Maybe it is important that you know what's going on in the world. But what we don't need to do is to be consumed and controlled by what's going on in the world. I would even argue that you even really need to know. But you definitely don't need to be controlled and consumed by it. And so Jesus actually spoke into this. Jesus actually gives some words that kind of leans into this idea. It's in Mark chapter 13, verses 7 through the beginning of verse 9. And here's on two screens here. It says, "When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. These things must happen. But the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places, as well as famines. These are the beginning of birth pains. So be on your guard." Now, when Jesus speaks these words, he's absolutely getting into an eschatological discourse. He is beginning a discussion on end times with his disciples. I am not going to get into a discussion on the book of Revelation and the end times today. Ron can stay seated, right? But here's what you need to do, right? We actually will be discussing that in your small groups. There's at least two groups that are going to discuss the book of Revelations coming up in a couple of weeks. And so if that's what you'd like to talk about, then you come and let us know. Now, I know that the group that I lead, that Ron's a part of, will probably be a little heated at times. I think that maybe the group that Macy leads may not be as heated, so there are two options for you. There's the abrasive one, and then probably a little softer one, I think. That you can come to. And whichever one Ron and I are not at will probably be the softer one. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. But I want you to come to that if you need to. But here's what's going on here. Jesus isn't just predicting end times. That's not what he's just doing here, right? You'll hear of wars, rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, earthquakes, as well as famines. Like, he's not just warning about the end times. What he's saying is kind of a snapshot of everyday life. This is what we have today. This isn't what's coming. This is what we have today. I'm not saying the end is coming. Don't connect the dots. I'm not connecting. All I'm saying is this is everyday life. These are the things that we hear about day in and day out, because we live in a fallen and messy world. Every generation, we're not unique, every generation has faced this noise and this fear and this uncertainty. There is not a time where these things have not been prevalent and what people talked about. The details change, right? Swords become screens and rumors become retweets, but it's exactly the same thing. There are divided minds. It leads to being discouraged. It leads to disengaging as followers of Christ. And then we just kind of repeat and do the same thing over and over again. And so Jesus knew that his followers would live right in the middle of that. That's what he's talking to them. That's what he's talking to us. He says, you're going to be right in the middle of this all the time. It is always going to happen. It is always going to be there. He knew that they and us would live in a world that is surrounded by turmoil and conflict and instability and uncertainty, and that there would be voices that would pull us in every direction. This is the most important thing. You have to pay attention to this. This is the most important thing. You have to vote this way. This is the most important thing. You have to stand against this. Jesus knew that chaos was coming. Jesus lived in that chaos. He lived in that tension. He knew that there would be these alarming headlines and there would be all this pressure that would steal the peace of his people. And it has been that way ever since Eve took the fruit. It's not new what we're facing right now. The Bible is full of stories written in the most extraordinary uncertainty, the most difficult times. Like when you read through the Bible, open any page, and there's something traumatic that's going on in the world around those people. It is not all wrinkle-free, problem-free lives. That's not what any of the followers of God lived. Joseph rose to prominence during a time of an incredible famine. Moses was the long-awaited leader after 400 years of silence and praying. Like how impatient do we get after 4 minutes? 400 years they were oppressed by the Egyptians. David faced challenges to his throne from his predecessor and from his children. The whole nation was taken captive and faced hostility for their faith. Mary and Joseph brought a child into the world and then immediately had to flee from a tyrant king who was killing infants. Even Jesus' disciples faced profound uncertainty on the eve of his crucifixion and then incredible persecution afterwards. The world, what Jesus is saying is, hey, these things are going to happen. They always have and they always will. What he's getting at, what he wants us to know is that what we're supposed to see is that in every story, God was present, he was working, he was faithful, and he was unfazed by what was happening. He always has been and he always will be. It didn't catch him off guard. He didn't fret going, what am I going to do about this one? He knew it all along. And he was always working in all of those things, the constant rhythm underneath it. Think about it this way. Who's ever been to the beach? All right, little participation, good. Right, so if you go along the beach, you stand along the beach, and especially when it's busy, then you can there's water splashing, right? There's seagulls kind of squawking. There's people shouting and laughing. I had the hardest time trying to figure out how to spell squawking. I just could not get it. There's a W in there somewhere, right? Anyway, it's water splashing, seagulls squawking, people shouting and laughing. And if you've ever been, it can be chaotic. It can be overwhelming if that's not what you're used to. But if you'll kind of listen underneath all of that, there is this, underneath all of the chaos, there is this steady rhythm, right? There's the tide coming in and out. There's the waves constantly crashing beneath all the noise. And it becomes so normal that we don't even really hear it sometimes amidst everything else. And that's really, I think, what God's presence is like. In the middle of all of this noise, that's what he's doing, steadily and constantly. This rhythmic heartbeat behind it all. Reliable and unshaken. We may not notice it all the way that God is involved in our world and in our lives, but that doesn't mean he's not. Throughout the entire Bible, there were people who didn't realize he was listening, but he constantly was. Read through the book of Judges. We'll get it right for a while, and then we'll mess up for twice as long. Then we'll get it right for a while, we'll mess up again. God is constantly listening. And so the world's noise has always been loud and distracting. Maybe louder in some times, I might give you that. That it's louder in some eras, quieter in others, but it is never absent. The noise of the world around us, it's never gone. And it's not just wars or governments or global crisis, right? It's the constant turbulence around us. It's the cultural pressures. It's the political tension. It's the economic instability. It's the social division. It is the endless stream of updates and opinions and breaking news that's available to us at all times of the day. The volume of the world never really turns off, does it? You can silence yours, but it still tries to get through. That's why Jesus, and I underlined it, that's why I think Jesus in this passage, when he's telling them, not just an eschatological discourse, but he's giving them two incredible pieces of advice. He kind of starts off verse 7, and then he ends it with the beginning of verse 9. And those words that he's telling them about the world that they live in, not just the world that's to come, but the world that they live in, they absolutely apply to the world we live in now. So here's the two things that he said. If you remember, I underlined them. It says, do not be alarmed was the first one. The second one, you can guess what it was, right? Be on guard, right? Okay, I'm trying to make sure y'all are engaged, and it is not. Y'all are, is the heat too hot in here? Is that what it is? Maybe we should turn the air on. I know it's there, but I was making it easy for you. Thank you. The air does need to be on. It is toasty in here. But anyway, so here's what I want to get at. Here's Jesus' advice, Jesus' words to them, right? In the midst of all they're living, eschatological discourse, sure, end times are coming, look for this stuff, but also this stuff is happening right now. Not saying the end is coming, I'm saying this stuff is happening right now one way or another. And so Jesus says, do not be alarmed. And he's not asking them to pretend like the world isn't intense. He's not saying, that, like, hey, I want you to just be numb and dumb to what's going on around you. He's not asking them to deny reality. He's not saying, hey, none of this stuff isn't happening. He's just saying, hey, I don't want you to be frightened by all the stuff that's happening. That's what he's saying. I don't want it to jerk you around one way or another. You have to pay attention to it. That's what he's saying. I don't want it to overwhelm you. I don't want it to be what consumes you and it's all that you think about. He is not saying, hey, ignore the headlines. That's not what I'm saying. He's not saying ignore the headlines. He is not saying, hey, I want you to act like nothing is wrong and just pretend it isn't happening. He's saying, don't let fear take the lead. Don't let fear be in charge of you. He's saying, I want you to be spiritually awake, to be alert, right? Do not be alarmed. It means the idea of being awake, right? He's saying, I want you to be spiritually awake, but not on edge. And there's a difference between spiritually awake and being on edge. Being on edge means that you're reactive, you're restless, you're pulled around in every direction by every headline and rumor, right? That's what we experience. That's what keeps us up at night. That's on edge. Being awake means that we're steady, we're prayerful, and we're aware of God's presence in the midst of all of it. Two entirely different responses to the same bit of information. We live so much of life on edge, amped up about what could happen. God says, I just want you to lean back and relax a little bit. He says, don't be alarmed. He's saying, be attentive, but also be at peace. And if you can't be at peace, then lower your attentiveness to it. All right, we'll get to that in a minute, right? He's saying the world is going to make its noise. You're going to hear about all of this stuff, but do not let it control your heart. That's what he's saying. Do not let it overwhelm you. Do not let it be the thing that guides you day in and day out. Do not let it be the thing that controls your daily living. And so then he says the second part, which is be on your guard, and he's not telling his followers to kind of brace for impact. He's not telling us, like, let's bristle up and let's get ready. Let's get our right stance so we can stand back against what's coming against us. He's not telling us to live in this permanent state of survival mode. He's not saying, I want you to refresh your news every hour, and as soon as you pull the screen down to kind of refresh, you do it again so you don't miss any update. He's not saying, I want you to live your life on high alert all the time, 24/7. He isn't inviting us to live a life of tension or panic or constant hypervigilance. That's vigilance. To live a life of tension, panic, and constant hypervigilance. That's not what he's trying to do. That's not what be on your guard means. What he means by be on your guard, he says, I want you to pay attention to what truly matters. Not everything that's happening. What's really, really important? What really, really makes a difference? Not all of this, but what really, really makes a difference. For us to be on guard is a call to steadiness in a world that is everything but steady. We are supposed to be marked not by our alarm to what's going on. That's not what we should be raising about in all of our conversations. Did you hear this? Did you see this? Did you see they voted on this? Did you see they didn't vote on this? It should be our faithfulness of what God is doing in the midst of everything. But our message is weird. Our message is wrong. Because the noise is seeping in and it's what comes out eventually. Be on your guard means keeping your eyes open. It means keeping your heart steady. And it's keeping your hope fixed, grounded in what does not move. Even when the world feels ridiculous and crazy and there's wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and famine and pestilence, we don't focus on any of those things. We look to the one who works behind all of them. And so when Jesus says, do not be alarmed, be on your guard, that is a reminder for us today. That's the way that we're supposed to live our lives. Don't be alarmed, but be on guard, which sounds like an oxymoron. Don't be alarmed, but be on guard. There is something we should do one way or another. But then the question is then, how do we figure out what I should pay attention to? And how do we figure out what does lean into my life and kind of get into my life? What requires us to get our attention? And then what's just the noise that we need to push out? And then I think there's 3 questions. I want you to hear all 3 questions, and then I'm looking forward to when we close in prayer, and then we sing our last song, and then we kind of come back and wrap up again. Like, I'm looking forward to that part. Right? So I want you to get these 3 questions, right? So the first one is this. Is it worth losing sleep over? Is it worth you losing sleep over? What's fretting you right now, whatever it happens to be, I don't know what it is. You know what it is. I don't need to know. Is it worth losing sleep over? Not everything that makes noise around you deserves your mental and emotional energy. My kids will call me all the time. This is a terrible example, but hey, the car's making this noise. I'm like, well, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it right now. You are 7 hours away. It's probably not a big deal. Call me if the car breaks down, right? Now, I'm a terrible parent. I know, sure, right? That's not what I want you to get. The idea is, I can't fix it. I can't do anything about it, and it's not that big of a deal. And it never has been, really. Don't feel bad for my kids. It has never been a big deal. But we don't have to lose sleep over every little thing that happens, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens. A lot of stuff that goes on in the world around you. Every day there are headlines, there are social media posts, there are cultural debates, and all of them want our attention. Everything. Open your news feed. Something wants your attention. Turn on your news. Something wants your attention. It's all calling you to say, you have to do something about this right now. It's not just, hey, let me give you the information. It's saying, no, this is what you need to do. And it's overwhelming us. It's too much noise. And some of it is important, but most of it, and I'd love to have that argument with you. Some of it might be important, but most of it is a distraction dressed up as something important. Most of it is just to get you to draw your attention from what's really, really important. And so Jesus invites us. What Jesus is asking, what do we look at? The question we ask is, does this really matter in light of eternity? Does it really matter in light of eternity? Does it require my action, or am I just feeding my anxiety to step into it? Because that's what a lot of us do. We get all worked up and anxious about what's going on, and I got to fix it. I got to lean into it. You can't fix it. How many days have you leaned into it, and it's still going on? You didn't fix it. You've just overwhelmed and caused this unrestfulness, this unpeacefulness in yourself. We're not called to, and neither is it good for us to react to every disturbance that's around us. We have to learn to discern what truly requires our attention and what we can just let go of. I'm just going to let that one go. Worrying about every rumor, worrying about every shift in the news, worrying about every cultural headline, it drains us of our peace, and it never changes the outcome. Never has. All of your worrying, all that stuff is still going on. You worried about it all night long. You scrolled your news feed. You saw this was going on. You put your phone down. You worried about it for 6 hours instead of sleeping, and you got up, and it was the first story again. Nobody called you and said, hey, thanks for worrying because it's all better now. Your worry didn't do what you thought it was going to do. So we have to hold our concern. We have to reserve our concern for the things that align with God's priorities, the things that advance His kingdom, and then the things that really call us to faithful action. The rest of it's stuff, we just let it go. All right, so that's the first question, right? Is it worth me losing sleep over? The second question is this. Can I even do something about it? Which I think is a really good question for us to ask. Is this even something that I can do something about? Honestly, sometimes the answer is yes. There are some things that you can do something about. Some of the noise around us, there are actionable steps that we can take to remedy that thing. There are things that are within our control that we're called to respond to. After all, Jesus does call us to alertness, right? Not passivity. And he calls us to alertness for a reason, because he also empowers us to go do something in the world around us. He also empowers us to accomplish his purposes and bring about his kingdom here on earth. And so sometimes there are things that we can do something about. And when it is something we can influence, we have to faithfully act. We can't put it off and go, someone else will do it. We have to faithfully act on that thing. And that means that you speak up for justice. That means that you step into a need in your community. It means that you use whatever skills or resources or passions or heart cry that you have to address whatever is going on in the world around you. But again, discernment matters. Is this truly mine to act on, or am I just reacting to the noise of the world around us? Like, that's the sub-question with that. Am I still just feeding my anxiety? Am I just reacting to what's going on? Or is God really saying, hey, I want you to lean into this? Right? When we can discern the answer to that, when we can figure out the nuance there, then it protects our energy, it kind of guards our peace, and ensures that we're focused on what's really, really important. Because God has called you to do something really, really important. Maybe it is that thing. But there's, I think, a greater likelihood that he's called you to do something that impacts his kingdom in a very tangible way. We don't have to fix everything. And every outcome isn't dependent upon us. So we do what we can with our hands, and then we leave the rest in his. And this is the third question. Is this one for God, not me? We work through. Is it even worth losing sleep over? Is this something that I can even do something about? Yes or no? And then, you know what? If I can, is this one for God, not me? Is he supposed to handle this one? I'm not supposed to do anything with it. A lot of the noise that around us is something that we can't do anything about. That is not meant to discourage you. That is meant to give you a little bit of freedom. A lot of the noise that goes around you, you can't do anything about. There are events, there are circumstances, there are global pressures and issues going on that you cannot change no matter how much you want to. No matter how hard you might try, you can't change some of those things. And I think this is where Paul's words really come in handy when we're trying to answer this question. Paul writes this, from prison, mind you, right? From house arrest. Paul's not at the penthouse going, I got a few minutes between the beach and my spa day, and let me let them know what's going on. Right? He's in the middle of this mess. And this is what he writes, Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. He says, be anxious for nothing. Don't let any of that stuff fret you. Don't let any of that stuff worry you. It's not for you. Be anxious for nothing, but here's what you do. Here's what you do. I've already went through and figured out, God, can I do something about this? I can. Then let me do what I can do. And now you've gone, God, can I do something about this? No, I cannot. I'm not supposed to. So here's what I do. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. That's what we do. When we answer the question, God, this one's for you. I can't do this. I can't solve this. I can't fix this. I can't address this in any way, shape, or form. So here's what we do. I'm anxious for nothing. I'm not going to let this thing bother me. Whatever this thing is, I'm not going to let it bother me. Prayer, petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. This is where trust becomes active, not passive. We can all say, I trust Jesus all day long. But if we don't back it up by living this way, then it didn't make a difference what we said. This is where trust is active, not passive. It's not just something we say, but it's something we do. We present our concerns to God. We address them to him in prayer. We lay them to him. We say, God, this is what I'm worried about. This is what's going on in the world around me. I'm going to lay this at your feet. I am grateful for you're the God that you are, and that you have constantly been involved in the light in human history throughout creation, that you have constantly cared and seen your will and your way and your purposes brought through in every situation. I'm going to give it all to you. I'm really worried about it. I'm going to give it all to you and just go ahead. Like, that's the part that we have a hard time with. We'll do this. God, I'm going to give it to you. Handle it. I need you to handle it. I can't do it. I can't worry about it anymore. God, come on. Do you need me to take it back? We take it back from him all the time. This is not what he's saying. He's saying, hey, hand it over. And then you just walk away from it. He says the world is going to rage. The headlines are going to be alarming. The culture is going to pressure in around you, and it's going to feel overwhelming. But what is for God alone needs to be just handed over to him to let him do. You're not doing yourself any favors by trying to fix it. Let me show you what happens. if we can do that, right? If that's the way that we can live, if we can be anxious for nothing, if we can, in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present our requests to God, if we can do those things, this is what Paul says is possible. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Right? That's why we can't sleep, because we're letting all this stuff creep into our hearts and our minds and overwhelm us. And what Jesus is trying to teach, what Paul is trying to say is just hand it over. The stuff you can't do anything about anyway, and then let my peace. Let the peace of God, which doesn't make any sense, lean into you and guard you. Right? That's the end result. That's what we want. When there's something we can't control, we say, God, this one is yours. This one I fixed, this one I could, and I did, but this one I can't, this one's yours. When we hand over to God what only He can handle, then we stop chasing after all the false alarms that are going off all around us. We stop getting distracted by every little thing that happens that we couldn't do anything about to begin with. Our attention gets focused on what His calling is for us. Our minds become steady in the midst of all the turmoil around us because all of it's still there. But I still have a peace that doesn't make sense. And we find that our hope rests in something far greater than what's going on around us. So is it worth losing sleep over? If the noise outside doesn't truly matter, then don't let it steal your attention. Don't let it be what you focused on. Can you do something about it? If so, yes. If you can, then yes. Then act wisely and faithfully. If not, hand it over to God. Let Him handle it, and then you just get to do the best part. You just get to rest in His peace. Not like some person who's completely unaware and just like, I'm just kind of going through life with nothing. But going, no, it's there, and I know it's there, and it'll bother me if I think about it, but God said I want you to have peace, not restlessness with all this stuff. Because here's what I really want to say, and I'm going to say it 2 different ways in the next 5 minutes, because I want to make sure that you hear this. The problem isn't really the noise that's out there. Right? The problem isn't really the noise that's out there. I know that's what you want to say. You want to tell me it's the noise that's out there. But it's when the noise sneaks its way in here. That's what the problem, that's where the problem really is. It's when it comes in here and we stay awake every night, replaying all the stuff that we heard throughout the day, and then fretting and worrying and fearful about what we're going to hear tomorrow. Right? The problem isn't what's out there. It's what we've allowed in here. Every headline, every argument, every tragedy, every rumor, every what-if scenario, we're trying to process it all on our own rather than handing it over, and it all keeps us up at night. What's causing you to lose sleep is not what's happening out there. It is what's happening. It's what you're allowing to happen in here. That's the 2 different ways to make sure you got it. It is not about what's happening out there. It is about what you're allowing. You're allowing. Did you hear that part? You're allowing to happen in here. You have a choice. Am I going to let this seep into me, or am I going to be obedient to what God has already said and hand it over to Him with prayer and petitions and thanksgiving, and then I'm going to rest in His peace and let Him guard my heart and my mind? Jesus warns His disciples. He says, you're going to hear things that unsettle you. He said it way back then. You are going to hear things that unsettle you, but you don't have to absorb them. They don't have to be what dictates your day in and day out. And there's a fine line between being awake all night and being attentive or alert to what's actually going on in the world and what God wants you to be. The noise around you is not going to go anywhere. It has been there. It will continue to be there. Headlines will keep breaking. Rumors will keep swirling. The chaos will keep coming. Jesus never promised you that you would have a quiet life. He never promised you that you were going to live in a quiet world. It's exactly the opposite. He says you're going to have some troubles. There's going to be all of this stuff. You're going to have some problems as a follower of mine. The world is not going to be quiet. But I can quiet your soul. I can quiet your spirit. I can ease you in the midst of all the noise. And that quiet that He does with us, it's not from the absence of sound. It's not because I turned off the TV, it's gone. It's not because I left my phone in the kitchen, I'm not going to bring it into the bedroom. It's because there is a Savior who wants to empower and live in us and speak a better word into our lives. His word is steady. His presence is constant. His peace is possible today, just as it was then. So we can let the world roar. We can let it be as loud and as noisy as it wants. We don't have to mirror it inside ourselves. What Jesus says is instead keep your eyes open to his work, keep your hope fixed on his future, and keep yourself calm with his presence. In the midst of noise and uncertainty, we're invited to hear God's voice. You're going to hear about all these things: wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes. You're going to hear all of these things, all of this unsteadiness. But what I want you to hear behind all of it, this is what God says, is my steady voice, my unshakable presence. I want that to be what you anchor yourself in. I want that to be what overflows in you and what comes back out of you. Because there is enough turmoil and headache and stress in the world. You don't need to add to it with our conversations. Our conversations as people who love Jesus should bring those individuals back to a place of peace that we've already found for ourselves. The world can get as loud as it wants to get, but Jesus will always give you rest if you'll just look at it and allow it differently. So we're going to pray. Worship team, you can kind of come up, and here's what I want us to do and pray. You can sit for right now, and then I'll have you stand in a minute. There's a couple of different things that I wrote down that I think probably maybe where you are on this. You may have your own idea. You may have your own thought about, hey, here's what's going on in my mind. Here's what's going on in my heart. But here's like 4 or 5 things. But maybe it's Jesus, teach me to stay awake spiritually without living on edge. Lord, keep me awake, but not on edge. Right? You're on edge with the way that you're restless about what's going on. And what Jesus says is let's shift that. Let's turn that into something useful. Maybe God, show me what is worth my concern and what it is that I need to let go of. Lord, maybe calm what's happening inside of me, even if the world around me is ridiculous chaos. Jesus, remind me that you are near, especially when I'm overwhelmed. Lord, guard my mind from fear and anchor my heart in faith. God, help me hear your voice above all the noise around us. And Jesus, give me a rest that doesn't depend on the world around me being quiet. Stand if you would, and let's pray. Lord, we're grateful for your love, your grace, your mercy. Lord, we're grateful for the way that you have worked in our lives in big and small ways. Lord, we're grateful that you have given us the Word of God, that we have given us your involvement in human history, that we can thumb through and we can find all of these people who experienced the greatest pressures and trials and turmoils. And when they took it upon themselves, there was always absolute failure and misery. But Lord, when they came to you, when they trusted in you and your outcome and your hand and your timing, Lord, that's when you did great and mighty things. Lord, the world we live in right now is no different. It's a mess. How many times has our phones maybe alerted us since we've been in here with some breaking news? We're going to get in the car and open up our news feeds and immediately see the tragedy that something happened in the last hour. And we'll have a choice in that moment to get sucked into it and let it be what consumes and drives our conversations and our thoughts through the rest of the day, or we'll have an opportunity to go, God, I know the world is messy and my heart breaks for what's going on. But God, keep me at peace and keep me at prayer. For them, for the situation, but for me, God. Because I am most effective for you in the kingdom when I'm in prayer. When I'm crying out to you, when I'm presenting to you the things that are happening in the world as if you didn't know. And then going, God, you handle it. If you want me to step in, I'll step in. You tell me how, but I'm not going to do it until you tell me to. So, Lord, the world around us is overwhelming. We cannot escape the noise of it all. But what we can find is your presence and your peace in the midst of all the noise. So when I set out this week, writing this series, working on this series, this was the one that was the most difficult for me because this is not me. Like I'm reading it, as I'm thinking about it, I'm praying about it, I'm kind of working through it, I'm like, this is not me. I'm not bothered by the world stuff. Like I've turned it all off. Like I don't scroll through, I'm not on all the social stuff, I'm just done with it. And then somewhere around Thursday, something triggered, and then it was like, well, you haven't always been, which is really kind of a silly thought. I should have had that before then. But I remember having a conversation like this a couple of years ago and talking about this very thing. And it was that moment I heard a pastor that shared some of these ideas, and then I went, let me work through this stuff. Is this even mine? Can I do something about it? Is it worth me fretting over? Or am I just trying to hold on to something I should give to God? And I worked through all of that stuff on my own. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm not just the pastor, like I'm a client, right? Not just the president, I'm not just a pastor here, like I've been through this stuff, so I can tell you it works. You want to sit there and go, malarkey, or whatever the word happens to be, right? None of that stuff works. He's foolish. I'm not. I can tell you it does. I am way happier and healthier and available to the kingdom because of me going, I'm not going to fret with all of this stuff in our lives. And I'm telling you, you can too. I'm telling you, you can too. I'm telling you, there is freedom. There is rest. There is something far greater than the worry and the anxiety and the noise that's screaming for your attention day in and day out. There's a God who says, just come to me and let's just rest. Let me handle what I'm going to handle. I'm going to empower you to handle what needs to be done. And let's just move the kingdom forward. I'm telling you. I want you to call me this week. Usually when there's problems, I'm like, is that right? No, ask Campbell at. I want you to email me and call me and go, you're foolish, you're silly, and this is why. We'll have that discussion. I would love to have it. I would love to hear your perspective about why you can't let it go. Maybe you'll teach me something. You won't. And that might be why people don't follow up with me, things like that, but I want to help you through it. I want to help you through it. I want you to be free from the noise that's around you. I want you to live what God has called you to live, not just purpose, but peace in your life. Because that's the beginning of everything else that we do for Him, from this place of peace in His presence. So wrestle with it this week. Maybe pick a day. If you can't pick a day, pick an hour where you're just going to shut off everything. I'm going to log out of all this stuff so I don't get any of the notifications. And rest in His presence. I don't mean go take a nap. If you need to do that first, do that. But then spend the next hour in His presence and let Him see if He won't help you through and speak to you and empower you in a way that leaves you from a place of rest, from a place of peace and purpose. One day. 1 hour, 1 afternoon, whatever it happens to be. Will you do that this week? Will you do that this week? Thank you. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday on site, online at 10 a.m.